There are currently 6 regions in Fortnite where players can compete in tournaments to win hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, and throughout the years, countless players have been regarded as one of the best at some point or another. So today, we're going to answer the question of who is currently the best player in every region. To do this, we'll be looking at each pro's placements throughout their careers, but mainly focusing on recent performances compared to those years ago. Let's first start off with the biggest and best region, EU. Now, there are way too many players to look at when trying to decide who is currently the best. You have players like Tyson, who used to be by far the best in the world, but recently hasn't had the best performances. Then you got others like Vanyak, who have been around for a while, but just recently made a name for himself after winning FNCS. Or maybe even someone like Thomas HD, who despite never winning has gotten countless top 3s and has made well over $1 million from competing. There are just too many players I can name, but I think the answer is one of these two duos. The first is Malibuka and Mustache. By now, you should all know both of them since they started making a name for themselves all the way back in Chapter 2. They each have a handful of top 5 placements, with Malibuka having one FNCS win, which was the first season of Chapter 5, and obviously Mustache winning with him that season and back in Chapter 4 with Tyson. This is just a duo that no matter who they're playing with, you should never not have them in their top 5, and individually they stand out on their own. However, I don't think either of them is currently the best in EU. Instead, I believe the current best is the duo of a player I already mentioned and great friends with Malibuka and Mustache. It's gotta be Swizzy. Some of you may be surprised where others expected this. His career so far has been fascinating to say the least. Swizzy first started off competing in Asia and would end up winning FNCS there. Shortly after though, he would end up moving to the west side of Russia, therefore switching to EU. Then not too long after moving, he would end up winning the Chapter 4 Season 3 FNCS. But if you remember, there was a ton of drama because of this. Since he was Russian and because of the war with Ukraine, Epic Games wasn't allowed to pay him, meaning he lost out on over $100,000 and his qualification spot at the last global championship. However, he didn't let this demotivate him. Since then, he continued to grind, and in his first season ever playing with Vanyak, went on to dominate the grand finals, officially making him a 3x FNCS champion. Like I said with EU, there are many different players to pick, but looking at by far the best region out there, OCE, there's really only one pick in my opinion, and that's gotta be Alex. There is no other pro who really does it like him, placing in tournaments all the way back when he was just 10 years old, to getting banned and now becoming a multi-FNCS champion. Ever since he was unbanned all the way back in Chapter 2 Season 7, he's been a force to be reckoned with. Alex is not only the best fighter in OCE, but definitely one of the best in the entire world. And his consistency during FNCS is like no other, placing 3rd twice, 2nd 3 times, and of course 1st place another 3. And it was actually in this chapter where he was able to add another 2nd and 1st to those accomplishments, so recently he's just been undoubtedly the best. Now with that all being said, his land placements have been the complete opposite of his on OCE, with him getting a 46th in the 2022 FNCS Invitationals, then a 49th in the Global Championship. But this season, Alex and his duo Worthy are trying something new to make sure Globals goes much different this time around. And most of you probably know that's by moving to NA to compete in FNCS. As of now, it's hard to say how they will do since they came over a little bit later into the season, so we'll just have to wait and see how things go from here. Moving on to Brazil, I think there's really only 2 players in this debate, with the first being PH Zin. If you're not familiar with him, you may be surprised to learn that he is tied with the 2nd most FNCS wins ever at 5. And he was actually the first player ever to win 4 FNCSs in a row, from Chapter 2 Season 7 to Chapter 3 Season 1. On top of this, back at the 2022 FNCS Invitationals, he was the highest placing team from a small region, getting 5th. There's just one big problem though. Over the last few seasons, he's really been struggling, so because of that, I personally can't say he's the best as of now, and instead, you can probably guess who I'm going to pick, and that's King. By the way, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. He's been relevant ever since he made a name for himself during the World Cup, instantly standing out as an extremely mechanical player, and the fact that he made $900,000 from it definitely helps. But since then, he's only continued to dominate, getting 2 seconds and 4 firsts in FNCS. With that being said, just like on OCE, his land performances over the last 2 years haven't been super good. So with that being said, you could possibly put PHZen above him, or some other player from Brazil. On top of that, this chapter has been a bit interesting. The first season, he decided to take his skills over to EU to see how he'd perform. And honestly, they did pretty good, making the grand finals, but unfortunately, they ended up getting triple contested at not the best split. So understandably, they wouldn't do so well. He did plan on staying there, but would end up going back to Brazil in season 2, where he placed 6th. Now when talking about King, a 6th place might not seem very good, however, it's not bad at all. And so far this season, they're looking really good just off of their placements throughout the week 2 qualifiers. So it really wouldn't shock me to see him tie PHZen with the second most ever FNCS wins. Now that one can be up for debate, but I think over on Middle East, there's just one answer, and that's CalGamer, who has had a very interesting career. Before becoming a multi-FNCS champion, he actually used to be an NA West player. Now, we didn't see any crazy amount of success throughout his years there, but right before he ended up moving, he would qualify for his first ever FNCS Grand Finals, which was the Solo All-Star Showdown. And he actually did pretty well in it considering. Ever since his first season on Middle East, which was Chapter 2 Season 7, he's made every single Grand Finals, getting 8 top 5s, 2 of those being seconds, and 3 being wins that were back to back to back. And so far this chapter, he's gotten first and second, so I don't see that streak changing anytime soon. Saying that, last Globals he wasn't actually able to make the finals since there were qualifiers at the LAN. So unfortunately when he did play against other regions, they didn't perform the best. However, this time around there are no qualifiers and they're guaranteed in the finals, so it'll be really cool to see how he performs. Now again, saying all of that, you could actually possibly interchange him with his teammate 7mans. But I think CalGamer just barely has the edge on him because he's just so good mechanically, which not many people know, but he's pretty much the Middle East Peterbot. Heading into the second to last region, this one was really hard for me to pick, and that's Asia. The reason for this is I'm just not super familiar with a few of the top players, and on top of this, it seems like every season there's a completely new duo that's on top. With that all being said, I think I narrowed it down to 2 players, Shalom and Zagu. Most of you have probably heard of Zagu, even if you don't follow him, because of all of his crazy strategies he comes up with on Twitter. So far he's been able to get 3 FNCS wins and a 2nd place, with one of those wins being in this chapter. However, last season was a bit disappointing with him getting 10th. However, the only reason I'm not picking him as the best is purely because he hasn't yet proved himself at LAN, unlike Shalom. Recently, Shalom has had very similar accomplishments to Zagu, and the only thing that really sets him apart is the fact that he started making the grand finals consistently back in Chapter 4. But it didn't take him very long to get really good, because after his 3rd ever Grands appearance, he would end up placing 3rd place. And actually, as of Chapter 5, he is playing with Zagu now, so as you could probably guess, that's where he got his FNCS win. But like I mentioned earlier, the only reason I rate him higher is because of his LAN performance. Last year at the 2023 Global Championship, he managed to pull off a very impressive 5th place. And just like PHZen back in 2022, he was the highest placing team from a small region. So even though Zagu has way more FNCS wins, I count the Globals much higher than just the normal Asia FNCS finals. But I may be completely wrong here and missed out on another top pro, so please let me know below if you think this is a good pick. Finally, ending off this video, we have NA Central. Now there's so many top tier pros that I can mention, just like with EU, but I won't drag this out any longer since you probably know who I'm gonna say. But first, I need to give a massive shout out to Poyo. Everyone knows he's good, but since he's been playing with Peterbot, he just gets overshadowed. And nobody seems to remember how crazy of a streak he's had so far. Not counting globals, he got a 1st, 2nd, 5th, 3rd, and another 2nd in the last 5 online FNCSs. Of course though, the best player has to go to his duo, Peterbot. Everyone knows last season he ran the entire region, and this time around he's still been very dominant. This isn't even factoring in how good he was in late Chapter 2 and the entirety of Chapter 3, where he got his first ever FNCS win. And I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if he got his 3rd very soon. This video is obviously subjective, so let me know in the comments who you think is actually the best player in their region. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and check out these videos here. Have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.